Welcome to our gathering today at First Unitarian Universalist Church of Stockton. We're glad you joined us and hope you will find here what you are seeking. We continue in virtual mode, but hopefully we'll be able to come together again in person sometime soon. We're a community of individuals holding many different beliefs, coming from many different places, and each progressing on our own journeys of life and faith. We join together in our commitment to care for humanity and in our effort to shape a better, healthier, more accepting, more inclusive, and more hopeful world. We promise to accept and encourage all those persons of goodwill who gather here, recognizing that we all continue to grow and learn throughout our lifetimes. We especially welcome and stand with LGBTQ persons, even as we seek to welcome all persons of every age, ability, status, color, and ethnicity. We strive to make our community a place of peace and acceptance, love and nurture, even as we challenge ourselves and others to live more faithfully according to the values of Unitarian Universalism.
Our opening words today are from William Sinkford, previous UUA president. We are a gentle and generous people, but let us not forget our anger. May it fuel not only our commitment to compassion, but also our commitment to make fundamental changes. Our vision of the beloved community must stand against a vision that would allow the privilege of the few to be accepted as just and even holy. Our religious vision must again and again ask, who is my neighbor? And strive always to include more and more of us. As we intone the words that gave birth to this nation, we the people, we are and we should be both a gentle and an angry people. Our chalice lighting is from W.E.B. Du Bois. Now is the accepted time, not tomorrow, not some more convenient season. It is today that our best work can be done, and not some future day or future year. It is today that we fit ourselves for the greater usefulness of tomorrow. Today is the seed time. Now are the hours of work, and tomorrow comes the harvest and the playtime.
At this time, we try to greet each other, and I invite you to send your thoughts and your greetings out to those from this congregation or friends that you'd like to invite for when we come back together. Now we share words of affirmation, usually between children and adults, but I will read both parts. We believe in love. Love is the only doctrine of this church. We believe in truth. The quest for truth is our sacrament. We believe in helping others, and service is our prayer. We believe in the sacredness of life. To dwell together in peace, seek knowledge and freedom, serve humanity and fellowship, and cherish the earth and its creatures, this do we covenant, each with the other.
Over my head, I hear music in the air. Over my head, I hear music in the air. Over my head, I hear music in the air. There must be a spirit somewhere. Over my head, I see trouble in the air. Over my head, I see trouble in the air. Over my head, I see trouble in the air. There must be a spirit somewhere. Over my head, I hear singing in the air. Over my head, I hear singing in the air. Over my head, I hear singing in the air. There must be a spirit somewhere.
Hi, today I'm going to read a few excerpts from Bold and Brave, 10 Heroes Who Won Women the Right to Vote, written by Kirsten Gillibrand, with art by Mara Kalman. Sojourner Truth. Sojourner Truth's given name was Isabella Baumfree. She was born into slavery in Ulster County, New York. She left her owner in 1826, the year before enslaved people were freed in her state. Years later, she changed her name. Sojourner means someone who travels from place to place, and truth was at the center of her faith. She once said, "I will shake every place I go to," and she did exactly that. Sojourner was one of the first African-American women to successfully stand up for herself in court. Her young son was still enslaved, and she sued to free him and won. Sojourner fought to end slavery and traveled the country pressing for equality for all. She worked with some of the most important thinkers of the day, such as abolitionist Frederick Douglass and President Abraham Lincoln. In 1851, she spoke at the Women's Rights Convention in Akron, Ohio, and in 1867 at the American Equal Rights Association meeting in New York. Sojourner asserted that all people deserve the right to vote no matter the color of their skin, or if they were male or female. Sojourner lived to bring justice to others, proclaiming that the truth is powerful and will prevail. Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman was born into slavery in Dorchester County, Maryland, and had a very hard life. But her faith in her family taught her that she was special, strong, and brave. In 1849, Harriet escaped from slavery, then spent years helping her family and others escape. She wrote a letter to a friend explaining why. "I have heard their groans and sighs and seen their tears, and I would give every drop of blood in my veins to free them." She was a conductor on the Underground Railroad, a network of those who helped bring enslaved people to freedom. She ran toward danger, not away from it. Harriet was so courageous and so certain about what to do that people often called her General Tubman. During the Civil War, Harriet served as a nurse, an armed scout, and a spy. After the war, she turned her efforts to gaining suffrage for all women and was especially interested in the rights of African American women. In 1898, Harriet gave speeches for women's rights in New York City, Boston, and Washington, D.C. She continued to help people throughout her life. Today, designers at the U.S. Mint, which makes our money, are considering a new $20 bill bearing her image to honor her bravery and conviction. Ida B. Wells. Orphaned at 16 in Holly Springs, Mississippi, Ida B. Wells fought for her place in the world her whole life. When she was only 22 years old, a train conductor told Ida to give up her seat because she was sitting in the ladies' coach, which he said was only for white women. Ida had a first-class ticket, so she refused to move. 3 men dragged her out. As soon as she got home to Memphis, she sued the railroad. Even though she didn't ultimately win her court fight, her bravery inspired later activists. Ida became a respected journalist who wrote about her experiences and the violence and injustice faced by African Americans throughout the country. She believed that the people must know before they can act, and there is no educator to compare with the press. Ida founded the Alpha Suffrage Club of Chicago in 1913 to organize African American women to fight for voting rights. During the 1913 parade in Washington, D.C., she ignored racist objections and marched with the otherwise white Illinois delegation on behalf of the Alpha Suffrage Club. To encourage others, she wrote, "The way to right wrongs is to turn the light of truth upon them."
At this time in our service, we share milestones in our lives by lighting candles of joy and concern. One joy we have to share is that several of our members and friends have actually gotten the vaccine, some with their second doses. We send our good thoughts and prayers out for those who are still struggling and concerned about COVID-19, for those who are recovering, and for those who may yet get it. For those who are still dealing with power outages and issues of flooding and problems in Texas and other places, we send our good energy and our good thoughts. For those of our members who have become homebound and have lost touch with friends, we light another candle and hope that we shall soon be able to get together, all of us. Light another candle for all those things that have gone unspoken. We send our good energy out in the world to all who are in need. So may it be. Amen. As we take these moments in meditation, we think of all the people in the world who have been struggling with COVID-19, but we also share the hope that soon another vaccine will be available to those in America, and there are other vaccines around the world that hopefully will be able to control this pandemic and allow us to return to a somewhat more normal lifestyle. We think of all the people who are suffering and still recovering from the storms that hit several days ago. We send our good energy to them and hope that they will soon be able to get their water back and their electricity and be able to return to at least what had become a somewhat more normal lifestyle under the pandemic. We raise our hopes that we'll be able to come back together soon. We know that it is hard to lose contact with each other, and so we do our best to stay in touch. We send our good thoughts to each other and hope for a time together when all will be healthy and able to come back together. We give thanks for this community where we are able to share our stories and to be safe and to support each other. We give thanks for all that we are and all that we will be to each other and to all those who come to join us. We give thanks for all these blessings. Amen.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Litany of Restoration. If recognizing the interdependence of all life, we strive to build a community, the strength we gather will be our salvation. If you are black and I am white, it will not matter. If you are female and I am male, it will not matter. If you are older and I am younger, it will not matter. If you are progressive and I am conservative, it will not matter. If you are straight and I am gay, it will not matter. If you are Christian and I am Jewish, it will not matter. If we join spirits as brothers and sisters, the pain of our aloneness will be lessened, and that does matter. In this spirit, we build community and move toward restoration. By Marjorie Bowens Wheatley.
And at this time, we share our gifts and offerings. I thank you for those who have continued to support this congregation throughout the pandemic. I invite anyone who would like to send in a pledge payment or to make any kind of contribution to send it to our church office, 2737 Pacific Avenue, Stockton, California, 95204. Thank you. These words come from Tandeka, Unitarian Universalist theologian. And in the back of our hymnal, it's entitled The Legacy of Caring, number 666. Despair is my private pain, born from what I have failed to say, failed to do, failed to overcome. Be still, my inner self. Let me rise to you. Let me reach down into your pain and soothe you. I turn to you to renew my life. I turn to the world, the streets of the city, the worn tapestries of brokerage firms, drug dealers, private estates, personal things in the bag lady's cart, rage and pain in the faces that turn from me, afraid of their own inner worlds. This common world I love anew, as the lifeblood of generations who refuse to surrender their humanity in an inhumane world, courses through my veins. From within this world, my despair is transformed to hope, and I begin anew the legacy of caring. Today I share meditations on Black history. The more I learn of Black history in America, the more disappointed I am with historians. I should start by saying that I love history and that I continue to be fascinated by what I discover in my reading and web surfing each year. I suppose a good bit of my fascination is from reading the stories of interesting people, discovering their foibles and the context from which they accomplished whatever caused them to be remembered. Unfortunately, the discoveries and advances of Black Americans are often either ignored or separated from the details of their personhood. Over the years, I have gotten lists of amazing discoveries or advances accomplished by Black Americans, and I have been astounded at what amazing things they have done. And yet, it is as if history totally forgot that they were Black. If this meant we were actually closer to a colorblind society, I would be rejoicing. But I'm pretty sure it is more of a conspiracy to downplay the successes and accomplishments of Blacks. Black History Month was created to counter this tendency to ignore or forget the accomplishments of Blacks and to highlight a great number of amazing individuals who just happened to be Black. As most of you know, as a lifelong Northern liberal who has done my best to treat all persons with equal respect, it has been hard for me to acknowledge my complicity in racism and white supremacy. I did not have much trouble at all admitting that I benefited from white male privilege, but I have always tried to avoid and counter racism with acceptance. Over the years, however, I've become convinced of the significance of keeping silent and not doing more to actively counter racism and white supremacy. My reading of history has helped me to understand that white supremacy is as deeply ingrained in the United States as it ever was in South Africa or any other nation that has separated people by the color of their skin. So today, on the last day of Black History Month, I want to take time to meditate upon the importance of Black men and women in shaping our nation and our church. In previous years, we have offered short biographies of important Black women and men, highlighting just a few of the millions of Blacks who have contributed to our nation. Today, I invite us to take a few moments to think of those people and all the others whose names we may never hear or know who helped make our nation possible. May we remember Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, MLK Jr., Langston Hughes, W.E.B. Du Bois, Miles Davis, Paul Robeson, Scott Joplin, Booker T. Washington, Louis Armstrong, Jesse Owens, Charles R. Drew, Duke Ellington, Billie Holiday, Lena Horne, Adam Clayton Powell Jr., Jackie Robinson, Richard Wright, Ralph Bunche, Nat King Cole, Willie Mays, Ernie Banks, Rosa Parks, Muhammad Ali, James Baldwin, John Coltrane, Angela Davis, Jimi Hendrix, Thurgood Marshall, Sidney Poitier, Malcolm X, Hank Aaron, Maya Angelou, James Brown, Barbara Jordan, Jesse Jackson, Katherine Johnson, Dorothy Vaughan, and Mary Jackson, Alice Walker, Michael Jordan, Spike Lee, Denzel Washington, Michelle Obama, Toni Morrison, and Oprah Winfrey, and so many more. I also invite us to meditate upon the reality that blacks and other persons of color, many getting only minimum wage, tend to make up a much larger portion of essential workers than their portion of society at large. They've also had a harder time getting the COVID-19 vaccine and have been dying at a much higher rate than whites. This disparity, even more than in normal times, is a life or death matter. The enslavement of indigenous Black American people by Europeans began in the islands discovered and claimed by Columbus under the doctrine of discovery, where millions died of starvation or disease brought by the Spanish, or of cruel treatment in the quest to acquire gold to return to Spain. Genocide became the standard treatment for indigenous peoples in the Americas over the next several hundred years. The enslavement of African blacks for various roles in America began soon after the settlement of the mainland began. The southern states were built upon growing and harvesting cotton, which could only be accomplished economically by slaves. Elsewhere, slaves were used for much of the work of the growing nation, including construction of the Capitol. Cheap labor built this nation and continues to make it the richest nation, at least in terms of billionaires and millionaires. With fluctuating taxes, many American companies have moved their corporate offices to other countries to avoid what few taxes might detract from their wealth. A lot of manufacturing for Americas has followed the cheapest labor and fewest restrictions in various still developing nations. Trade agreements and massive subsidies have allowed rich corporations to exploit differences in costs and rules, leaving American workers unemployed or underemployed. Corporate offshoring of manufacturing has hit the poorest and least skilled workers the hardest here in the U.S. A higher proportion of those workers are, of course, persons of color and newer immigrants. Unregulated capitalism has created an ever-increasing divide between the wealthy and everyone else under the mantras of free markets, trickle-down economics, and pull yourself up by the bootstraps philosophy. There are plenty of poor whites, but there is a disproportionately large number of blacks among the unemployed, the underemployed, and those working poor getting at or near the minimum wage. The proportion of black men in jail is also disproportionately high, as they often are jailed for minor offenses and unable to make bail while awaiting trial. Whites are rarely subjected to the same treatment by police, stores, restaurants, government agents, or employers, which continues to be commonplace toward blacks. Driving while black, shopping while black, acting strangely due to drugs or mental illness while black, even walking while black can put black lives at risk in many parts of the country and even here in California. To be white and even just reasonably well off in America can be wonderful, but to be black, even among the fairly well off, can be disastrous. Justice for white folks is far too often a totally different reality than justice for blacks. But of course, this is nothing new. It has been the standard pattern here for hundreds of years. During the 20th century, there was some progress between the races. Blacks were allowed into white schools and universities. Busing and forced integration helped to balance the educational deficits faced by blacks in inferior schools. Blacks were allowed to participate in some sports that had been for whites only. Official racial barriers were dismantled under several Supreme Court decisions. The Voting Rights Act helped to ensure that blacks would be able to vote, though it recently has lost much of its power. The civil rights movement pushed for equal treatment though the assassination of The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the Vietnam War took much of the energy out of that movement. Much of the progress in recent decades was negated by the last 4 years under the previous regime. Hopefully, Biden and Harris will succeed in efforts to see racial justice return as a priority. Changing a few laws and getting some progressive court rulings isn't enough to make up for 400 years of oppression. It will take changing the hearts and minds of the whites who hold power and wealth and making some appropriate reparations to begin to atone for the sins of our nation. And yes, even those of us who have tried to practice inclusion and acceptance still have tolerated racial injustice for far too long. We should have done more, and even at this late date, we have so much yet that we can and should do. Within our own movement, Blacks have been often ignored or shunned. Black ministers and churches within our movement have been ignored or treated like missions rather than being accepted as partners in this work. Black ministers and other religious professionals have not received the level of support and assistance from congregations and the Unitarian Universalist Association that white ministers and religious professionals have received. Thus, the tenure of Black religious professionals in our congregations has often been short. This must change for us to become truly diverse and multicultural. As I close this meditation on Black history, I call upon all of us to have greater awareness and to engage in more direct action to bring about the world we want to see. If we want Blacks and other persons of color to join this congregation, it is up to us to invite them, welcome them, and include them. If we want to see the police respect Blacks and other persons of color and the mentally ill, we need to call them out on their failures and demand better training and better procedures, and if necessary, firings. If we want our world to treat all persons as equals, we need to write letters, stage marches, demonstrate, and stand with Blacks and other persons of color until things change. One short month on Black history will not replace full recognition, appreciation, and reparations for the Blacks who did so much to build this country. May we find another way. Shalom, salam, blessed be, namaste, and amen. As we close our time together today, I remind us that this church is dedicated to the proposition that behind all our differences, beneath all our diversity, there's a unity that makes us one and binds us forever together, in spite of time and death and the space between the stars. We pause in silent witness to that unity. May the stars carry your sadness away. May the flowers fill your heart with beauty. May hope forever wipe away your tears. And above all, may love make you strong. Go now in peace and love, and go out and change the world. Amen.